Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Debbie and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is February 28th, 2014. Are there any other alcoholics in the room? Wave, smile, jump up and down, do a dance, sing a song. Well, maybe not sing. All right. I'd like to welcome all of you to today's Threads of Recovery workshop. Acknowledging God's presence with a moment of silence, will follow that with a set-aside prayer. Prayer. Lord, help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything that I think I know about myself, everything that I know about my fellows, everything I think I know about my own recovery, for a much needed new experience in you, myself and my fellows, and a new experience in my own recovery. Help me see the truth. Amen. 1058 Threads of Recovery continues to offer virtual workshops 5 days a week. To be included in our weekly email, send your request to threads1058@gmail.com. This will keep you up to date on our workshops. Our group follows the 12 traditions. We stick to our singleness of purpose. We ask everyone to act as if they are in a live meeting. Please turn your camera on if you can. We love to see your smiling face. All details will be posted in the chat as well. The 7th tradition states every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. The contributions help to cover the group's expenses, but the 7th tradition is more than simply paying for rent and other group expenses. It is both a privilege and a responsibility of individual groups and members to ensure that our organization at every level remains forever self-supporting and free of outside influences that might divert us from our primary purpose. The monetary amount of each contribution is secondary to the spiritual connection that joins us in unity with AA groups around the world. The 7th tradition contributions can be made using Venmo, and those details are in the chat. This is an open meeting. Open meetings are available to anyone interested in Alcoholics Anonymous's program of recovery from alcoholism. Non-alcoholics are welcome to attend open meetings as observers. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our 2 speakers for today. Speaking on those famous steps 4 and 5, Babe and Terry. Take it away, guys.
Hey, everybody. Terry, alcoholic. Come on in, Babe.
Hi, kids. Babe, alcoholic.
Good to be here. I think we scared people last time with step 3. The room is a little bit shorter than it used to be. Hopefully we scare you guys more today with step 4. Oh man, Terry, alcoholic, sobriety date June 1st, 2019. Hey guys, thank you, Debbie, for both your services, and happy everyone who I'm seeing here. Julie, Ian, Alice, Babe, Robbie, good to see you guys. Yeah, let's get right into it. Page 55 states, sometimes we had to search fearlessly, but he was there. It sounds like search fearlessly sounds like step 4 to me. It talks on page 45 that where and how we're gonna find this power, and it talks about that on page 55. Where is deep down within us, the great realities within you, and how to find them is sometimes we have to search fearlessly for it, right? And in the last analysis, that's only where he would be, right? And I look and I thought about just what popped into my mind was the 5th step promises. And it's on page 75 of your book. I want you guys to go there. And I've done so many different types of inventories from Joe and Charlie's. I've done the 4-hour, do the steps in 4 hours away. I've done it with 5 columns. I've done it with 4. I've done it with 3. I've done the fear inventory with 2 and 5. I've done it in so many different ways. But actually, my first experience going through this process. I've done it exactly how it was out of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And because of that experience, the first time I did it, I experienced the full force of the fifth step promises. And these are by far one of my favorite promises in the book. I just want to read this to you guys. And yet again, for the people who got scared and don't want to show up today, why not do a fourth step and a fifth step if you hear these promises? So if you never heard this, I'm just going to read them out loud. We are delighted. We could look the world in the eye. We could be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. That feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. I mean, I took a one-way trip out to Minnesota, and yet again, I was willing to do it because I put my decision-making in other people's hands because I didn't trust me. And I go out to Minnesota, and this place called The Retreat is all united under the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's designed that you go through the first 9 steps, and you're making your amends when you get out. There was non-clinical, so I had no idea who worked there, who didn't. There are only 4 people on staff, and everybody who is there that looks like they're working there is actually just doing 12-step work, right? Which is pretty amazing. So, and what our process was to write a 4-step in treatment and also do the 5th step in treatment. And yet again, who didn't do that? Me. Yet again, where I go back to the chief characteristic of every alcoholic is defiance. There we go, ADD, alcoholic defiance disorder, right? And when I got out of rehab, I went through the process with my sponsor, exactly how it's laid out in the book. And when I got to this point, I said, yeah, I'm ready to rock and roll. Let's do this. And guys, it took me 2 weeks to knock out my 4-step, Debbie. 2 weeks. 2 weeks to draw the lines. Guys, I looked at those pretty lines. I even used my big book. You know, you use a big book to draw the lines. I did that. It was super straight. I didn't write anything, but it was beautiful. And all of a sudden, that pain, the desperation of a drowning man came back, right? I had an obsessive thought come in. And yet again, I just picked up that pen and I started to write, and I swallowed some big truths about myself, right? You know why I had such a difficult time with step 4 is because I didn't really abandon myself in step 3. Right? Step 3 is the keystone to all the steps. It's intertwined. Me making a decision is just a decision, right? How I actually turn my will and my life over to the care of God is steps 4 through 9, right? Basically, steps 3 through 7 are a package deal with a 1-hour break, with a meditation break, right? So when I looked at that, I went to 64, and I hope you guys have your books with you. Remember, bring your books to class. On the top of the page, 64, though our decision, which is our 3rd step decision, was vital. Vital means necessary for life. They take your vitals in the hospital, see if you're alive. And it's a crucial step, right? Our decision, it could have little permanent, I like that word permanent effect unless at once followed by a strenuous effort to face and to be rid of, to face and to be rid of, to purge, right? The things in ourselves which have been blocking us. That's the intent to step 4. I mean, long story short, I could say that's the intent of the entire program, Alcoholics Anonymous. Look at our 5th step promises, right? We feel the nearness of our Creator. Why is that? Because I face and I be rid of the stuff that's blocking me, and all of a sudden I have this nearness, this tuneness with God, right? Walking hand in hand on this broad highway. And then looking at this, it gets to this point where it says, being convinced that self manifested in various ways is what defeated us. We considered its common manifestation, and the common manifestations are resentment, fear, and our conduct, which is basically shame, guilt, and remorse. I looked at that, and being convinced of self and us are 2 different things. I didn't realize that for a long time until I heard a speaker talk about it. And self, yet again, is that little narrative, that little voice in our head. That's a little story, and it's just thoughts. And all of a sudden, I look at those thoughts, I buy the lie, and all of a sudden, I start to play God in other people's lives because of the God of reason. I think I know everything. And all of a sudden, I'm stepping on your toes, you're retaliating, I'm getting pissed, and I'm going to drink over it. And I look at my fourth step, I see all my belief systems and all my old ideas. Long story short, we have all these old ideas and these old belief systems. Somebody harms them, right? I need money to live. Somebody messes with that, right? And I cop an attitude and I go get drunk. And I've been living like that for a long time. And it gets to this part of the book where it says resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. Not even alcohol destroys more alcoholics than anything else. Resentment does. And what is resentment? Resentment is to refeel, to relive, to replay, to recreate this past event that happened. Either it's fancied or real. Most of my inventory, the first time I wrote, and it was funny because I write it down, all of it was fancied. It was BS. It was fun. I was kind of laughing when I was writing it. So I was like, man, this is not real. I'm just exaggerating it. Why? It's because that narrative in my head is talking to me over and over and over again, replaying, recreating, reliving it, right? Morphing it, making it sound worse than it is worse than it actually was, right? And this resentment stuff, I don't know about you guys, but I get extremely dark when I go into resentment, right? And it says resentment actually has the power to kill us. So resentment actually gives me power. I actually enjoy resentment sometimes in sobriety. I don't know about you. When I'm pissed, I'm like, yeah, I got some power. I feel some energy here. But here's the deal. On page 66, they kill us a bunch of times. Sorry, I put my book away. Uh-oh. On page 66, it says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads only to fertility and unhappiness. To the precise extent that we permit these, so I permit them, do I squander the hours that might have been worthwhile. But with the alcoholic whose hope and maintenance and the growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely grave. That's a death threat. They're killing me right there. Boom. We found it as fatal. Another death threat. Boom. For when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of spirit. I don't know about you guys, but harboring, I mean, I like to, I like to nurture resentment. I like to grow it. I like to fan it. I'll even check on it, see how you're doing, right? And because of that, there is no God in resentment. I'm just totally shut off from the sunlight of the spirit, right? It says this, the insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again, and with us to drink is to die. That's another death threat. I mean, it yet again, I'm just so grateful that I was approached by someone who was armed with the facts about themselves and armed with the facts about taking someone through the process. Okay, what about now?
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Back to resentment.
Back to resentment. Sorry about that. My wife put on her earphone and then it transferred over there. I don't know if you heard her singing or not. Resentment will kill you. Oh, she just looked at me. She's gonna kill me. Resentment's the number one offender. So it kills us. To drink is to die. That's a death threat. And what I used to do, guys, I used to take people through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous really fast. That's what I did for a long time. Did the 4 hours, do the steps in 4 hours. I mean, I've taken people the steps in 10 days. Right? That was the fastest I've ever done it. And I was like, let's implement now, perfect later. Implement now, perfect later. Let's get them to a spiritual experience. Let's wake them up, wake them up, wake them up. I didn't realize that a spiritual experience had an expiration date. Right? I had no idea that a spiritual experience had an expiration date. We're actually supposed to grow and maintain a spiritual experience. This is what they're talking about here. My hope is to a maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. I was more like acting a sponsor who was just a factory worker. Let's get you through the steps and on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one. What a disservice I was doing for such a long time. Imagine waking someone up and saying peace. On to the next one. I did that for a long time. Yet again, sponsorship's all about mistakes. And a mistake is just an invitation to a lesson learned. I learned from that. And what I learned from my sponsor when he first taught me is that resentment will kill you, Terry. And he was really strong on this page with me. And I want to be really strong with you guys right here, because I really need to understand that whenever I'm in resentment, it could kill me. In sobriety, 20, 30, 40, 50, it doesn't matter. If I grow it, if I nurture it, if I replay it, I recreate it, I refeel it, I'm in trouble. I am in trouble. And it says, if I want to live, if we were to live, yet again, do I want to live? Yeah. I had to be free of anger. The grouch and the brainstorm were not for us. And I actually thought the word brainstorm thought about me sitting in a room with Tim and we were just brainstorming ideas, right, Tim? Actually, in the 1930s means my brain's in a fit of rage. My brain's on fire. And then what a perfect description of what brainstorm is when I'm in resentment. And it says, they may be the dubious luxury of normal men, but for alcoholics, these things are poison. That's another death threat, right? This thing is going to kill us. So now I'm asked to look at these resentments through a different pair of glasses and look at through a different angle, right? Because these resentments that I'm looking at, column 1 and 2, these people are quite wrong, right? There's a lot of bad people out there. But this stuff right here, these resentments can kill me. I have to get free of this, and I can't wish it away more than I could wish away alcohol. I can't wish it away like I can't wish away self-will, right? When we look at our resentments, it's literally just looking all the way back. Like I said before, peeling back the onion. Look at resentments, you find fear, and then we're going to find fear, we're going to find self-reliance. I, me, my, right? The great I's, the great MY's, the great ME's, right? That's what we're looking at. It starts with me, it ends with me. And what I'm looking at through a different angle, it talks about looking at perhaps these people are spiritually sick. And that was revolutionary to me when I first came to it, right? And I like to say, like me, like myself as well. It says on the top of Whitley, top of 67, though we did not like their symptoms, column 2, and the way they disturbed us, column 3, they, like ourselves, were sick too. And I missed that line for a long time. When my sponsor said, put them in the hospital bed. So I'm not going to treat anyone who's got 2 days to live because they have cancer and I have a form of resentment towards them. I'm not going to be angry at them, right? Like they're dying of cancer, right? They're spiritually sick. They're sick. But my ego would look down on them to pretend that they're in the hospital bed. I'm better than you, right? But this is saying, like ourselves, they are sick too. We are equals, right? So the same pain that drives them drives me too. And that was a totally different game changer. So think about being stuck in traffic. And I'm pissed off being stuck in traffic. Like super pissed off. I got 5 minutes to get to work. I already was late to work yesterday and told my boss I was late yesterday because of something going on with traffic. Now I'm stuck in traffic again. Oh, he's going to be pissed. And I'm bristling, right? And I see this chopper above. It's Channel 7 News. They got a different angle on what's going down in front of me. I'm just looking at it through the lenses of me sitting in my car. There could be a 20-car pileup in front of me. There could be 3 people dead in front of me, and I don't even know because I can't see. I don't have that angle. All I have to do is turn on that radio and find out that what happened in front of me, that changes everything. I'm not going to be pissed off if I find out that 3 people are dead. There's a 20-car pileup. No way. Like ourselves, they are sick too. So I look at it through a different pair of glasses, and I think about a resentment, and I think about, I'm angry at my wife for being better than me. She thinks she's better than me. And I look at that line. This is where the transformation really happens from column 3 to column 4 of your inventory, right? Well, Terry, have you ever thought you were better than your wife? Yeah, all the time, right? Oh, okay, Terry, well, my wife hit me, right? Well, Terry, ever hit your wife? No, I've never touched a woman, ever done that. I will never do that for the rest of my day. Terry, have you ever been tempted to hit your wife? Yeah. I wanted to. Like ourselves, they are sick too. The same pain that drives them drives me too. I'm going through this great victim that we talked about on page 61. I'm the victim of the delusion that I could wrest satisfaction and happiness out of this world if I can only manage well. Now I'm going into this world of being forgiveness, right? I'm going into this part of my life where I'm actually getting free of resentment using the sick man prayer. My experience going through the sick man, through my inventory with a fifth step with my sponsor, he actually made me read the sick man prayer or the forgiveness prayer or the anger prayer, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it the me prayer because God saved me from me, right? And it says, we ask God to show them the same tolerance, pity, and patience that we cheerfully grant a sick friend. So when a person offended, we said to ourselves, this is a sick man or woman. How can I be helpful to him or her? God save me, not you. Save me from being angry. Thy will is being done. And all of a sudden I start to change in this moment. And I start to see where my mistakes are. Where am I at fault? Where am I to blame? Right? It's not my part. I don't say my part because if I say my part, that means you got a part. I'm going to be so hung up on your part. I'm going to forget about my part. Right? You know? And this is where I transformation. This is where I find out my defects of character. Column 4, very, very important. And there's 5 steps attached to column 4 of your inventory. Step 5, step 6, step 7, step 8, and step 9. Right? And it talks about where was I selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, and afraid. Where? Not was it a check mark list, which I used to do in the past with sponsees. Hey, just say this, just say that. No, where was I selfish? Where was I dishonest? The exact nature of the defect of character. Where? Very important, right? Because I can't get rid of this stuff without God's aid. I'm going to just face it and be rid of it. Face it and be rid of it. That's what we're doing here. And I looked at the fear inventory, and yet again, I'm just kind of going through my experience, mostly going through my first experience. It was just such a powerful time. What we do is we take our fears from our 4th column of our inventory, right? Where was I afraid? And we put that onto our fear inventory. It always threw me off for a bit. On page 68, says, what does it say? Did not we set the ball rolling? I'm like, where'd that question come from? I started these fears with me, self-reliance. And it starts with our inventory process. And I was asked to write down all my fears. And my sponsor at that time did it 3 ways, right? He didn't write columns. He just asked me to write all of them down and asked me why. And then we went over them. And then for each one, then he asked me, he's like, well, Terry, what ways have you tried to manage this fear? And I was like, well, I tried doing this. I got work. I called this person. I did that. I did this. I did that. He's like, that's fantastic. All those ways that you try to manage this fear, why do you still have it? Because self-reliance failed you, Terry. Right? And it was just like kind of a Scooby-Doo moment, right? Like, what? And he's like, what I want you to do for every one of your fears, I want you to go into your 5th step and say, you have nothing to fear, Terry. God has your back. And I start going through this process in the 5th step. I'm saying this in my 1-hour meditation. I'm like, I got nothing to fear. God has my back. I have nothing to fear about, whatever the actual fear is. And all of a sudden, I start to lose my fears. My fears, like it says in the 5th step promises, my fears fall from me. I'm like, they go away, you know? And it talks about in the fear inventory that we're on a new basis, a basis of trusting and relying upon God. And what I've came to believe, now I've come to trust, now I've come to rely on this power, right? And at this point of the book, I love this part of the book. This is one of my favorite parts of the book. And the fear prayer is one of the most powerful prayers that I still do it today. I did it this morning when my son woke me up at 4 a.m. I was like, I had fear that I was so angst up about me because I had to be at work at 7. I asked God, please remove my fear and direct my attention to what you would have me be, not do, be. Be what, Terry? You know, be a father, Terry. Be someone who's there for your son, Terry. Be selfless, Terry. Be an agent of God, Terry. Be happy, joyous, and free, Terry. Be, not do. It's not about learning, it's about becoming, guys. Becoming this way of life, using the words as a demonstration of how it works into action. That's why I love this part of the book. And it talks about our sex conduct. I really want to talk about this. I tried hiding my sex inventory from my sponsor in my 5th step. I thought he wouldn't notice. So yet again, I took a one-way trip to Minnesota. Right? Knowing that I want to do whatever it takes for victory over alcohol. Yet again, bulking all throughout the process. Right? And in a 5th step, already 2 hours deep into the 5th step, sitting outside a little coffee shop called Caribou. By the way, they got great coffee. If you're ever in Minnesota, go there. Right? Sitting in this little coffee shop, and I tried hiding it, right? Sipping it under there. And he's like, Terry, you missing something? And I was like, oh, he's like, what about your sex inventory? And I'm like, oh yeah, it's right here. So it was really funny. He was really gentle with me, just think about it. This is good sponsorship. Yet again, no holier than thou attitude, just a sincere to be helpful, right? No axes to grind, no fees to pay. That's what he was doing. And he was really gentle with me. And the following week we were eating, and he's like, you know that you tried hiding that your sex conduct from me. He's like, it's okay, come here. And he gives me a hug. And our 5th step talks about we're trying to have a new attitude and a new relationship with our Creator. And what is the definition of new? Something I've never experienced before. So I had to say that conduct inventory or sex inventory, whatever you want to call it, relationship inventory, in order to have a spiritual experience. And I did. When I actually did this, I used the 9 questions, which are on page 69. And it talks about how much time I got. I got a few minutes. I've done the column inventories for this one as well. It's just so much easier if you use the 9 questions. I don't really want to go over too much about the mechanics of it, but what I find out is you could do it for sexual relationships. You could actually do it for any type of relationship, a relationship with your boss, relationship with your mom, relationship with your dad, relationship with your brothers, your siblings, relationship with coworkers, whoever you want to do it with, right? And what you find out is you ask yourself 3 questions, or in the beginning, where was I selfish, dishonest, and inconsiderate, all right, over the period of time that I've known them. And what happens, I find all these patterns of inconsiderations based on the way I act out in my selfishness and act out in my inconsideration. You think about it, someone who goes to an insane asylum, they have to act insane to go into an insane asylum, right? And they get let go from an insane asylum because they act sane. So this is how I act out in selfishness and inconsideration and dishonesty. And I started to notice all these patterns, right? And then whom did I hurt? Whoever's attached to that particular person. It's a ripple effect. You're going to hear Babe probably talk about it's a blast radius, right? Whoever's attached to these people, right? And yet again, I didn't know that I was writing an 8 step at this time as well. Damn, Bill W. keeps tricking me at the same time. Where did I arouse jealousy, suspicion, bitterness? And then here's the great question. Where was I at fault? Where was I at fault is the answer to all the questions, the previous questions before, right? And then what I should have done instead is the magic one, right? Which is basically opposite of every single of all the 8 questions prior to that, right? Was I selfish? I have to be unselfish. Was I inconsiderate? Considerate. Patient, impatient, patient. Today I'm working with impatient. I'm asking God to help me be patient. I'm asking God to help me be gentle. And I'm asking God to help me be unselfish, right? And I can't grow into the sane and sound ideal on my own power. I need God's aid. And I bring that into morning meditation every single day. And I ask God to help me grow to be there, right? Grow to that right ideal. On page 70, it talks about it. Go to page 70. I've been practicing this a lot, baby. To sum up about sex, we earnestly pray for the right ideal. So God, please help me be gentle today with all my relationships, right? We guidance in each questionable situation. I've been practicing this one a lot. I mean, any questionable situation, bring God into it. Okay, what should I have for dinner tonight? Steak or eggs? I mean, steak or chicken? Steak or chicken? God, what should I do? Zero in, back in, steak. Let's go. Each questionable situation, right? And then the right thing to do, not the next right thing. the right thing, do the right thing right now. And all of a sudden I start to see God is intertwined into my heart and into my soul. And when I did that, when I did the fifth step, and afterwards my sponsor, you know, he went over the instructions right on page 65, go home, be quiet for an hour. I didn't do that. Yet again, ADD, alcoholic defiance disorder. He actually gave me a second option. He's like, why don't you just take a walk somewhere? That's what I did, because it sounded better than sitting alone. And I'm taking this walk, guys. And there's just something that happens when you clean house. And I withheld nothing. Yes, I did try to withhold, but I let it go while I was during the process. But I withheld everything. There's something about cleaning house that something enters into our hearts and starts to change us from the inside out. Something miraculous, page 25. Right? I remember walking down this road and I felt light. I felt lighter. Right? It was really odd. And then when I get back to my my sober house, I was alone at perfect peace and ease. Guys, my mind couldn't shut the F up. It would not shut up for the first 3 months of recovery. And this was the first time that I sat down on a couch by myself, not even the TV on, just enjoying peace of mind. I was at perfect peace, at ease and peace. I couldn't believe it. What other promise we have? Page 7. I put my book down. Uh-oh. My fears fall from me. Incredible. I was driven by fear, but now my spirit's awake. I'm no longer walking around asleep, dreaming I'm awake now. I'm awakened. I've had spiritual beliefs before, but now I begin to have a spiritual experience. My personality starts to change. I'm literally looking at life through a different pair of glasses. I'm living right here, right now. It says, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being, the exact nature of wrongs. Remember that? Right? Admitted to God, that's spirit. To ourselves, that's our mind. And to others, right? That's mind, body, and spirit, all interlocked together. And what is that? The result of that is the fourth dimension, which is a way of life, right? Page 25, our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way, a design for living, a way of a life, living right here, right now, from moment to moment to moment to moment basis. I was able to live in the moment. I could not live in, I talk about, after going to Thierry's house, it's pretty difficult. I mean, I was living in the future all the time. It talks about fear. Fear should be classed with stealing, right? It causes more trouble. What does it steal? It steals our current time, right? Right? This book was not written for kleptomaniacs. It was written for alcoholics. So what happens with fear is I make a conscious decision to rely on me. I make a conscious decision to rely on myself. And what happens when I do that? I live in the future. I'm living right here, right now, mind, body, and spirit. This is all happening within this hour that I'm in, right? And it says, we feel though the feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. I love asking this question when I read the promises after I hear a fifth step. I ask everyone who I do this with, and they have all responded the same way. I ask them, are you thinking about getting drunk right now? Every single one of them said no. From that point until I balked on 9, we'll get to that. We'll have fun when we get to that one. The drink obsession was relieved. About 4 months, about 4.5 or 5 months, the obsession to drink went away. I had alcohol literally in my house, and I was in a place of neutrality. Yet again, we'll get to where I get to 9 when the obsession came back because I balked on 9. What else we got? We feel though we're on the broad highway, walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. Yet again, guys, it's not a two-ness. It's a oneness, right? Me and God walking hand in hand in the spirit. Yet again, Babe Sponsee talks about this. I'm wrapped in the God blanket. I'm just overly consumed. God is working in and through me, and I actually am aware of it, which is wild. You know, what's really cool about the fourth dimension? When you know when you're in it. When you know when you're in it. I got to get going. I'm sorry about the technical issues and my cat. But yeah, guys, I can't wait. This is Babe's favorite step. So looking forward to hearing Babe. I do have to get ready to go to work, so I'll be in transit with the video off. So thank you, everyone. Bye.
Well, hi, kids. Babe Alcoholic, Dear Bear, thank you so much. Yeah, once again, you covered so much. It'll make my job so much easier. I love the people that say, I take people through the steps exactly the way my sponsor taught me. And Terry talked about changing the way he did it through the years. Haven't you learned anything in 20 years, you goof? And my first 4 step, we used the Joe and Charlie sheets. And that's what I did. When Joe and Charlie talked about resentments, I did the resentment. When they talked about fears, I did the fears. Then they talked about sex, I did sex. And then they did harms done others. They got another one. And that worked well. And I've come up with many different things. That's probably what I emphasize differently through the years. I start people out with one of the checklist forms that are identical to the columns in the book, but everybody seems to think that the resentment inventory is the big deal. And it's not, in my experience. This whole recovery, this whole life is about relationships. Me and God and me and you. Of course, my relationships are poisoned by my resentments, but I have people stop after the first 3 columns, you know, who you're pissed off at and what they did, and then what part of yourself is hurt, threatened, or interfered with. It doesn't necessarily mean anger. Resentment means is re-feeling. Sentience is the ability to have feelings. So I'm all about the feelings behind this stuff. And then I asked to have them stop, and I just give them a little form. And, you know, so if they, and I don't help people with their inventory. That's kind of unusual. It's your inventory. How did that make you feel? What part of you was hurt, threatened, or interfered with? Was it your pride? Was it your self-esteem? Was it your ambition? And you know, and if they're telling me, you know, and I say, oh, that looks like a self-esteem thing. Okay, check that. You know, I'm doing their inventory for them. I give them as much time as they need. My job is to get them enthused. Your 3rd step was vital and crucial. My whole point is to get somebody anxious to take this step, especially when to get it to step 5. I'm not going to sit around and judge your choice. It's your inventory, man. What you feel is what you feel. And then, so say you check self-esteem, and I got this from Mark Houston. So the part of self-affected, the how, why, what was hurt, threatened, or interfered with, not just anger. So my self-esteem, I have them write a little sentence. I don't want a whole friggin' book. One little sentence. So my self-esteem was hurt. And how I asked them to start that sentence is, I am. My wife threatened to leave me. My self-esteem is hurt because I am so much better than that. How dare she do that? You know, my emotional security. I have them start the sentence with, I can't be okay if. Pride. The other people have to see me this way that I see myself in self-esteem. Thomas Merton's got a great little definition of pride. Check it out. My ambition. I only want to. My relationships. I can't be okay unless. Pocketbook. Money makes things worse because. And then we stop right there. Go through those 3 columns. The book tells us referring to our list, referring to our list, referring to our list. Everybody's in this big damn hurry to get to column 4. But the first 3 columns hold the key to my future. Don't just do a check mark. Think about why is your self-esteem hurt? What part of you is really hurt? And that's why I don't hurry people through the steps anymore. Sometimes you need to hustle them a little bit, triage, you know, stop the bleeding. But I let you take as long as you want, as long as you're still doing it. And I call the prayer the bridge prayer. It's the bridge that gets me from column 3 to column 4, putting out of mind the wrongs of others. How do I do that? God, this is a sick person. Help me show them the same tolerance and kindness I cheerfully grant a sick friend. Then the wilderness people dominate us, and the wilderness people are often quite wrong. That's as far as most of us ever got. In step 3, in column 3, what's hurting me is that's as far as I ever got. So now if I can put out of mind your part in this, you're wrong in this, and where, the big thing, and I've come to believe now there is only one big character defect: selfishness. Well, self-centeredness manifested as selfishness. And what does it say? What do we look for in this thing? The manifestations of self. How do I treat the world? And yeah, Terry, there are reasons to face and be rid of the things that are blocking me from the decision I made in step 3. But what is our hope? The book says our hope is to have a spiritual experience. It ain't to come away from this thing with a list of what a jerk I've been my whole life. My hope is to have a spiritual experience. Keep this thing spiritual, man. And then we go on to, I have them go on to fears. And on the top of my little header, it's still the checkmark thing, 2 columns, ask her, what are you afraid of and why? And I've expanded that to ask them, try to identify what part of yourself you're using, that you're relying on rather than God to do that. And Terry's right. The fear prayer does say we ask God what he would have us be. But before that, it says we're in the world to play the role he assigns. So it is not only just be, it's also do. So if I'm trying, well, what role do you think God has in this? So, I'm why I'm afraid, Oh, and, I give them little helpful hints in like in the resentment part. Look at the 7 deadly needs: the need to be right, the need to get even, the need to look good, that's pride, the need to judge, that's pride, the need to know, the need to keep score. Well, how am I going to judge? How am I going to get even if I'm not keeping score? And finally, the need to control. And the way these 7 deadly needs show up is pride, anger, lust, envy, greed, gluttony, sloth. And so we look at the 7 deadly sins as 7 deadly needs that drives my resentment, which is my feelings toward you. So the fear, and Terry hit it, there's a fear behind every single resentment. I'm afraid I'll lose or I won't get something. So I ask them, write down for each fear, why am I afraid? I'm afraid I will lose ... or I'm afraid I won't get ... And then, once again, this is kind of from Mark Houston. The part of self that failed me. If I'm in fear, I'm in self-reliance rather than in God. So self-esteem, I start by I can ... My emotional security, once again, I can't be okay if. My ambition, I want to. My pride, I have to blank to be okay. My relationships, I use blank to make me feel okay. Pocketbook, I used money to. This is how we can use these parts of self, because that's a harder thing to recognize than the second column in or third column in the resentment inventory. It's hard to identify what it is that I'm trying to do to get through this fear. Terry touched on a more practical way of doing it. And there are, and the 7 deadly fears, I'm afraid of snakes. I ask you to go deeper. And once again, I will help them with one. Are you having one particular fear? You having one particular resentment that you just can't seem to struggle through? And a lot of people, it's usually their deep, dark secret parts, the fear or the resentment that they're struggling with. So I'll walk them through each of the columns on one, but then I turn them loose, let them look again. So I'm afraid of snakes. Oh, are you really? Or is it the fear of the unknown? Well, it's not conflict, anger, or resentment. Fear of intimacy. How's that for a relationships one? This fear of intimacy, the fear of change, the fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of criticism, fear of losing control, fear of pain and death. So if I'm afraid of snakes, I might be afraid of the unknown. I might well be afraid of losing control. I can't do it. I can't kill all the snakes in the world. But does it come down either to the unknown or the fear of pain, or ultimately death, depending on what the snake is? I'm afraid my wife is going to leave me. And how do I handle that? That's the fear of the unknown, fear of conflict, confrontation. I'm either going to suck up or I'm going to confront her and it gets worse. Fear of losing control. I can't let her go away. Fear of failure, rejection, abandonment, criticism. There's parts of stuff we rely on, and fears are huge. And that to me gets me finally to, and I don't do the sex inventory. I just do relationships inventory. And we do focus on those 9 questions. But with them, I start them off, once again, some fears behind relationship. Fear of the unknown or fear of change. What's going to happen if she leaves me? Fear of conflict, confrontation. Am I too submissive or am I being too demanding? Fear of intimacy. I'm afraid to show the real me. That's the biggie we deal with in step 5. Fear of failure, rejection, or abandonment. How I'm treating my wife, how I'm treating my kids. Are they going to walk away, or how am I treating you? Y'all going to just turn your cameras off? You already did. Fear of failure or rejection. Fear of losing control. I can't make you turn on your cameras. But unless I'm not okay, unless I'm in control, my sense of control is what protects me. And then I look for every relationship. Where was I selfish? ... And I give them 3 lines to write that down. I was dishonest. Look at where was I being dishonest with myself and with the other person. Where was I inconsiderate? Always. Did I consider these other people's feelings? Did I arouse jealousy? I aroused jealousy by. I aroused suspicion by. I aroused bitterness by. Then I even put in there my part. I was at fault. That's my part, because who else was hurt? Like Terry said, that's where we get to see the blast radius of the selfish relationships. My selfishness hurts some people's families, hurts people's friends, people I don't even know. And then what should I have done? What I should have done. And what do we do after that? We ask God, there's a prayer with each of the resentment and the fears. There are 3 prayers and a meditation in the relationships inventory. What if I fall short? We ask God. And in meditation, we ask God to help us form a sane and sound ideal. And what I suggest to people is that they, take all what I should have done with every big relationship in your life. We always do. There's always a lot to do with sex, of course, in the relationships, because they're the thing that we're not really good at, sex relations, because there's almost always selfishness in there. But if you go through and read all the what I should have done's, you can compile them into a practical working definition of a sane and sound ideal. If I do what I should have done all along, that's a pretty good ideal, and it's practical. I'm not going to be Saint Babe by next Tuesday. It's not that I'm going to be celibate, although I am now. And when I go through, like one sponsee was having trouble with relationships, how she treated other people in relationships or starting relationships. And this was right after Kate had died, like a few months after it. And I physically ached with loneliness. And so I was afraid of being alone. And then talking to her about hers, we both came to the conclusion deep down, it's just the fear of the unknown. Am I too forward in a relationship? Am I too hiding from relationships? It's all the fear of the unknown. I don't know what's going to happen. And that was astonishing to me. That's why it's so much fun to talk about just one big fear, one big resentment, and go through, because then I get to see myself in there. And then we get, so the way it works, you know, in person, I would take their checklist inventory sheet and they would read each of their long forms. And I give them the option to do it, but everyone says, I love the long forms. And so they sit down and they just read it to me. I don't interrupt them. I don't do anything. And you heard me say that I think the fifth step is the single most spiritual step we can take. And I got this from a fourth and fifth step workshop that I've been going to for years and years. And it's a Franciscan friar that runs it. And it's every 12-step program. But guidelines for hearing fifth steps. This is a powerful exercise. It's a powerful, you're giving this person a powerful gift. You're helping them break out of isolation. Isn't that the whole deal? The 12 and 12 says is the beginning of the end of our isolation. So if I'm sitting there with a clipboard and you're going to start reading me your fourth step and you think I'm just, you came up with this whole list of character deflects, index of maladjustments, you already hate yourself. And now my sponsor is going to just add to the list. I don't write anything down. It's your inventory. And the whole point for me is to have people trust me. Then, of course, so you may be helping save this person's life. Hearing someone's fifth step is a sacred honor. That is, and there's Mo, just in the nick of time. The fifth step is a sacred trust. To me, that is the most spiritual part of that fifth step. That for once we, like Mo says, wrapped in that God blanket, telling everything to one other human being. And what do we get out of that? At least at the end of this, I know I'm going to have someone I never have to have a secret from, that is always going to have my back, that is always going to love me, is never going to condemn me. Oh, yeah, get out of my office and clean off the seat before you go. Do you know how many character defects you have, you sorry person? That's not what a fifth step is for, although some people like to do that. My sponsor just added to my list of index of maladjustments. And I don't do that. It's your inventory. What's the sense? And then listen, the majority of time you will be listening. It's the other person's step. You might find it helpful to share a little bit. You know, I will encourage someone to keep going. Number 4, non-judgment. People maybe sharing some things you might find hard to hear, like a guy that molested old ladies in a nursing home. That was not pleasant to hear, but it's not my job to judge this guy. It's my job to help him find a power that will release him from that. And then advice giving. Be careful to avoid giving specific advice, especially if I'm not qualified to. So what does it say? That we lead double lives, that we rip off the masks. That's the point of step 5. That for once I get to be 100% honest with another human being. And most of us have never done that. And Terry touched on the big book promises, but this is what I watch for listening to someone's fifth step. To see the sense of relief mount from minute to minute. Everybody starts out with all this whole pile of long forms that they're going to sit and read to me. Maybe it's spiritual just because it's the longest they've ever heard me be quiet. But, you know, to watch the sense of relief mount from minute to minute. And you can watch it in people's face. They get through the first, they're nervous as a whore in church. And then they start reading. And they find out I'm not condemning them. I'm not judging. I'm just sitting there listening. And do a try with my eyes to encourage them to keep going. To sense of relief mount from minute to minute, to watch damned up emotions of years break out of their confinement. Somebody said, babe, I never see any tears. I never see any emotion in a fifth step. Oh my God. We get to watch the damned up emotion. Is the reason I don't interject anything. They've got their whole life story written there. Resentment by resentment. fear by fear, relationship by relationship. They're reading me their life story. And as they read it, they're experiencing their whole life from a whole new perspective. And that's why and there's always dammed up emotions breaking out of their confinement and miraculously vanished as soon as they're exposed. They're puked out there on the table or on the Zoom screen right in front of us in the sunlight, and they seem to just vanish. They're boogeymen. As the pain subsides, and there is pain, you watch that sense of relief, the pain, once it's out there, knowing that me, you, and God know this much about ourselves. Because remember, in step 4, what we do is swallow and digest some big chunks of truth about ourselves. It says we learn some humility, what we read to find out who we really are, followed by a sincere desire to become what we can be. I love that sense of humility. Now I know who I am, but I can be better with God's help, knowing that my sponsor, whomever I'm doing this 5th step with, has my back. They're not going to condemn me. They're always going to be there for me because I've been honest with them. What a blessing. And when humility and as the pain subsides, a healing tranquility takes place. You can watch it happen in people's face, unless I'm looking at a clipboard looking for more character defects. I watch their eyes. I don't watch I listen to the words, of course, and then what happens is that humility and serenity are so combined, something else of great moment is apt to occur. Many in AA, once agnostic or atheistic, tells us that during this stage of step 5, that he first actually felt the presence of God. What a difference that is than a list of character defects. Well, don't worry, step 6 is coming. But step 5 is a sense of freedom that we get from trusting God and another human being. First time publicly in our life. I know a guy that uses the 4 absolutes as a yardstick for the honesty that he's put out there. Am I striving to be absolutely pure? Am I striving to be absolutely honest? It says we only thought we cleaned house. We only thought we learned some humility. And so if they did think that, they're not being dishonest. They're just wrong. That's why we get to do this the rest of our life. So that is, and then this is Mo's favorite paragraph, along with all of them. The feeling of being at one with God and man, me, you, and God. This emerging from isolation through the open and honest sharing of our terrible burden of guilt brings us to a resting place where we may prepare ourselves for the following steps toward a full and meaningful sobriety. That's the joy in this. It's not so much this character defect hunt. It's the sense of trust, honesty that we get. And it really is it's remarkable to do that. And like one of our friends says, you get those and those promises that Thierry read. I can reread them again because they are a little important. Oh, yeah. And when we start, we pocket our pride and go to it because it takes some guts. You've written down some big chunks of truth about yourself, and they're not very pretty. I don't, Bill said, and I've since I've never suggested to a sponsee, but people say, I should write my inventory. I should be writing down my good qualities too. And it does say that some people are so afraid that they'll never start. So, but as a sponsor, I try to show you that you have good qualities. You don't have to write them down. You don't have to tell me about them. That's probably just pride anyway. So I don't put it. It says we search out the flaws in our nature. And the flaw is, where am I selfish? Where am I self-centered? Where am I frightened? And how did they show up? My very first 5th step, my ideal, I like simple and easy to remember, was to be considerate, to practice being considerate to every single human in my life, even the ones in the grocery store. And Terry talks about getting stuck in traffic. We get stuck behind a herd of cows crossing the road, but the effect is the same. And then a few 5th steps later, my ideal, 4 steps later, my ideal became compassionate. I could show you I could be considerate of you, but still hate your guts. And so then I spent years trying to show genuine compassion to people. And that's when once I learned some real compassion, some real empathy, people warn us, don't get involved emotionally with your sponsees. Oh my God, I get emotionally involved with the guy at the grocery store. I think this is all about being in life in the God's world together, holding hands with people. And so we pocket our pride and go to it every twist of every nook and cranny, withholding nothing. And that's why I try to just be there, to be a sympathetic face, non-judgmental. Let them talk about this, unloading this terrible burden of guilt that is built up through their whole life. And then what do we get? We can look the world in the eye. Because for the first time in my life, I was totally honest with you, looking face to face with you. Now, if I can talk about everything terrible that's happened to me, by me in my life, I can go out to the world and look the rest of the world in the eye, because I've exposed that stuff, found out that there is a possibility to change with God. Our fears fall from us, like Thierry said. I can be alone at perfect peace and ease. And isn't that interesting? I can be alone at perfect peace and ease through the end of isolation. There's a paradox, huh? I'm overjoyed just to be walking around earth with all of God's kids, warts and all. And then when I come home, I can be alone at peace and ease. And some people have their sponsees put the book on the shelf, take it down for an hour. I give you as long as you want. Take a week, man. Think about what you just experienced. This is a big effing deal. How do you feel? I ask people, how do you feel afterwards? Not one single sponsee in the many 5th steps I've listened to, not just all sponsees. I did one at this Mount Irenaeus, the 4th and 5th step workshop. It's open to anybody in any 12-step program. And I did the little talk on the relationships part of the inventory. And this young girl came up to me and, babe, would you hear my 5th step? And I said, sure, why? And she says, because your recovery shows. Nicest thing you could ever hear in AA, by the way. And so I said, yeah, and this is out in the woods on a mountain. And so we're sitting on a log, and she said, where do I start? And I said, at the beginning. And she said, well, I should tell you, I'm not an alcoholic. I'm an adult child of an alcoholic. She was in ACOA. And my immediate thought was, okay, here we go. I'm going to find out how terribly I've ruined this poor girl's life that I just met a half an hour ago. That was one of the most beautiful 5th steps I've ever heard. We're both crying. She says, you're like the father that I always wanted. This is what I wanted out of a guy. And there's a sponsee calling. I was talking yesterday. I had 2 sponsees call, my grandkid call, and a sponsee knocking at my back door. The trouble with sponsees, they're pesky little units. They're always coming around. But so we get to share life together. We share our burdens with each other. And that's the power of it. That's why we can be alone at peace and ease. And do you feel the nearness of your Creator? If anybody who's done any kind of decent 5th step should at least leave it that they feel a little bit closer to God. Because remember, our hope is to have a spiritual experience. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs. Now we have a spiritual experience. Feeling that the drink problem has disappeared will often come strongly. We're on the broad highway, skipping hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. And I never ask anybody, do you feel like you're walking down the broad highway? And, we are delighted. Not one in all of them, and I've probably listened to hundreds of 5th steps. Not one single person has said, I feel delighted. And so, take at least an hour, but take as long as you want. I give them a week to think about what they've done. And after that week, then they can say, I am delighted. I know this freedom. And then we can start looking, and I don't focus on character defects in step 6 either. But to me, that trust, and I even say I don't have any secrets, but I have a whole closet full of secrets. They're just not mine. They're other people's, because I will keep your confidence. But Mo, I tell people at the beginning, I will talk about you. That's why I cross-talked when Mo came in. I'm going to talk about you a lot, but never to intentionally hurt you, only to use you as an example of God's power in your life, the power of this program. Why shouldn't we talk about someone that's had a remarkable spiritual experience, that started out afraid of everything or angry at everything or whatever it is you're feeling, and then come to this place of freedom, the end of the isolation? And yeah, step 6 is where I look for the blossoms. I don't look for the dead branches, but that's step 6. So step 5 to me is totally spiritual. And after her 5th step, she sent me that coin I don't know where I told you, but best gift I ever got in 73 years, little AA coin. One side says, you held out, she put a heart on. One side said, you held out your hand. The other side says, and it changed my life. That's the power of a 5th step. So if you want a clipboard of character defects, you've probably all seen the sheet where there's about 80 of them. I'm still working on my character defects. I'm pretty sure God takes care of those. That's enough out of me.
Thank you, Dave. Fantastic. And thank you, Terry. Wonderful, just wonderful. Let's see. All right. Would one of you close the meeting with a prayer or reading of your choice? I'm gonna guess Terry's gonna put it to you, babe.
I'll use the one Terry used on me last night. I was expecting some big, beautiful prayer. Terry says, we're going to do the thank you prayer. Thank you, God. Amen.
Amen. I love it. Succinct.
I did
to
too.
the point.
That's why I used it.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right, everyone can unmute and thank our speakers.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you
Terry,
very much.
babe.
Great
you,
job.
Thank you.
Excellent. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks.